Tuesday morning, and it has been such a busy week for me. I'm out 5 nights in a row this week, and I just appreciate your prayers for all the stuff I've got to get done at the moment. We are in Isaiah 13, and there's a turning point in the book of Isaiah today. And we finished Isaiah 1 to 12, start chapter 13. Barry Webb notes in his preface to this section that Judah, was a relatively small nation, threatened by these great superpowers around, it was constantly tempted to look to political and military alliances for their salvation. And chapters 1 to 12 started with a focus on Judah, ended with a proclamation to the nations. This section starts by focusing on the nations and then ends up with Judah. But the message is the same. Salvation is to be found in the Lord alone. Now, Assyria is not so much the focus here, but not forgotten. We're going to come back to them in chapter 14. But we're starting today with Babylon. And really all of chapter 13 is about Babylon. And it is an address against Babylon, setting out the circumstances in which Babylon will be brought down, but also alerting us to the fact that these words spoken against Babylon and the other nations are actually words for the nation of Israel to hear. So chapter 13 verse 1, a pronouncement concerning Babylon that Isaiah son of Amos saw. Now, Babylon was no newcomer to the world stage. It had a history, says Barry Webb, of course, reaching right back to the start of the Bible, right back to, those early chapters of Genesis and the Tower of Babel, and it is a symbol of the arrogant power and pomp of the world that was characteristic of the nations as a whole in their rebellion against God. I've been there actually. My uncle was Australia's ambassador to Iraq, and back in 1990 I went on a brief holiday to Iraq. I think it was 4 or 5 days, and one day my uncle drove me out to Babylon, and we stood looking at the restored mighty blue gates of Babylon and thinking about what this city might have once been like. And Babylon, of course, for Isaiah, is really the story of all the nations that have defied God. Let's read through it. Isaiah 13:2. Lift up a banner on a barren mountain. Call out to them. Signal with your hand, and they'll go through the gates of the nobles. I've commanded my consecrated ones. Yes, I've called my warriors who celebrate my triumph to execute my wrath. Listen, a commotion on the mountains like that of a mighty people. Listen, an uproar on the kingdoms like nations being gathered together. The Lord of armies is mobilizing an army for war. They're coming from a distant land, from the farthest horizon. The Lord and his weapons of his wrath to destroy the whole country. Wail, for the day of the Lord is near. It will come as destruction from the Almighty. Therefore everyone's hands will become weak and every man will lose heart. They'll be horrified, pain and agony will seize them. They'll be in anguish like a woman in labor. They'll look at each other, their faces flushed with fear. Look, the day of the Lord is coming, cruel with fury and burning anger, to make the earth a desolation and to destroy its sinners. Indeed, the stars of the sky and its constellations will not give their light. The sun will be dark when it rises and the moon will not shine. I'll punish the world for its evil and wicked people for their iniquities. I'll put an end to the pride of the arrogant and humiliate the insolence of the tyrants. I'll make a human more scarce than fine gold, and mankind more rare than the gold of fire. Therefore I'll make the heavens tremble, and the earth will shake from its foundations at the wrath of the Lord of armies on the day of his burning anger. Like wandering gazelles and like sheep without a shepherd, each one will turn to his own people. Each one will flee to his own land. Whoever is found will be stabbed, and whoever is caught will die by the sword. Their children will be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses will be looted, and their wives raped. It's a confronting story of judgment. It's a confronting prediction of the fall of Babylon, and there's absolutely no ambiguity. The chapter keeps going. The prophecy of Isaiah continues. Look, I'm stirring up the Medes against them. More about the Medes in a moment, who cannot be brought off with silver and who have no desire for the gold. Their bows will cut young men to pieces. They'll have no compassion on offsprings. They will not look with pity on children. And Babylon, the jewel of the kingdoms, the glory of the pride of the Chaldeans, will be like Sodom and Gomorrah when the Lord overthrew them. It'll never be inhabited or lived in from generation to generation. A nomad will not pitch his tent there, and shepherds will not let their flocks rest there. But desert creatures will lie down there, and owls will fill the houses. Ostriches will dwell there, and wild goats will leap about. Hyenas will howl in the fortresses and jackals in luxurious palaces. Babylon's time is almost up. Her days are almost over. That's a stunning prediction to read. And let me say, we drove out to Babylon. There were newly restored blue gates at the front of Babylon. And then just rocks, the shape of where buildings once were, but no one lived there. That was what it was like 30 years ago, and it didn't look like anyone had lived there for centuries. So this prediction of the Medes overrunning Babylon in a violent bloodbath, actually, according to Barry Webb, that did not happen. Rather, Webb says Babylon surrendered without a fight to Cyrus the Persian, who had already achieved ascendancy over the Medes. But as Webb said, in Isaiah's day, the Medes were the barbarians of the ancient Near East. They lived just beyond the edge of the civilized world, and they were always threatening to overwhelm it. So the Lord's announcement that he'll stir up the Medes is a declaration that he's already settled on the destruction of Babylon. The focus not so much on the means but on the ends, and a final great day is coming before the Lord, when all human arrogance will be judged and all human pomp and power exposed for the hollowness that they are. Well, that is the devastating chapter that is Isaiah chapter 13, the judgment of God on the unbelievers and on the most powerful unbelievers of the day, the Babylonians. So, more tomorrow as we look at Isaiah chapter 14. We'll try and think about the New Testament application of all of this then. Thanks for that. See you then. God bless.